In today's presentation on Make the Most of RMA, we will do a quick start presentation of RMA, focusing on the setup options required for all end users. RMA includes configurable process flows where you authorize the customer return. You can initiate your replacement orders and your credit notes. You can return faulty goods to the vendor as required. With RMA, your RMA number are automatically allocated and tracked. You can send email instructions to the customer about how to process the return, and you can track your RMA based on user definable status and stages. We will then look at some more advanced ways you can configure RMA using templates and item policies. Then we will explore how RMA module works with other ORCID modules. We will demonstrate using Extender for configurable workflow for RMA approval. We will look at configuring notes and document management link to facilitate collaboration when processing returns. Finally, we will look at sample cubes to analyze returns and sales using Info Explorer. But first, let's start the clock, and we've got about 15 minutes to set up RMA and send the first email to a customer. Over to you, Anne.
In this RMA Quick Start video, we're going to download, install and activate RMA. And then we're going to enter our serial number and activation code in the RMA license screen. After that, we're going to configure the options in the RMA options screen, authorizations, email templates and optional fields. And we'll also have a look at the use of the external status, fault type, workflow stage and repair agent reference tables. Then we'll have a quick look at the templates, item policies and customer templates, and then go ahead and create an RMA and email the customer. To download any of ORCID's modules, you go to orcid.systems, log in, and then go to the product downloads and select the version you want. For each version, we have our sample data, the object model, the NFR serial number, which you can apply for activation codes, and then all the modules. So I'm going to download RMA version 2022, and then you can install by running the install shield. Having installed RMA, we're now going to go and activate it in the required company. And once activated, we can go to the Setup license and key in your serial number and activation code. And using the NFR serial number, I'm going to activate for 30 days. And then we need to reopen the desktop to see all the RMA icons. And after activating, we should go to Admin Services, assign Visual Process Flows, and assign the RA Transactions Visual Process Flow to those users who are going to be entering RMA transactions. We have now downloaded, installed and activated RMA and entered the NFR serial number and activated for 30 days in our company. And then we also made the visual process flow available to our users. Now we're going to go ahead and configure the options. In the options, on the Processing tab, you should specify your number length for RMA numbers and the prefix and the starting number that you want to start from. And there's some other configuration options, for example, how you want to integrate with serialized and lot tracking, whether you're going to use AR multiple contacts, and you can refer to the online help for more details on all these fields. Authorizations are needed for those users who are going to override template validations. The external status is used to keep track of the status according to the customer, so why it is being returned. Default types are configurable for the types of products you're dealing with. And workflow stage can work in conjunction with your RMA process and can be configured accordingly. If you are using repair agents, we recommend you use the same repair agent code as you have for your vendors, so you can easily keep track of the RMAs and items sent to the repair agents. And you can configure optional fields at the RMA document header level, the RMA document item detail level, and the RMA document miscellaneous charge item level. And if you are wanting to integrate with the optional fields in order entry and purchase orders for the credit notes, replacement orders, and purchase orders created, then if you create the same named optional field at the same level in PO or OE, then the optional field value selected on the RMA document will flow on to the target document that's created by RMA. And if you're sending RMA remittance advices via email, you can configure email message templates to go with the RMA documents. And you can use the F1 help or the online help to get a list of the message template values you can use. The final three setup options, the templates, item policy, and customer templates, all relate to your processing rules for RMAs. Firstly, in RMA templates, you are able to specify specific processing rules that you want when you're doing returns, as opposed to repairs. And you might have different rules relating to warranty repairs. For example, on your returns, you may want to specify a specific salesperson code so that any replacement order or credit note uses the salesperson code that you are using for returns. You might want to automatically charge a restocking fee based on a miscellaneous charge code and either a fixed value on the miscellaneous charge code or a restocking fee percentage. So in this case, our restocking fee is going to be called handling charge, and it'll be 10% of the RMA. When creating target documents, where do you want to put the RMA document? On the RMA item detail lines, do you want to allow any of these status codes to be blank, or are they mandatory? And if you typically put the item on a replacement order or on a credit note, which you may do with returns, and you may have different rules for miscellaneous items. You might want to default your status and workflow stage, and you may want to make the invoice mandatory for credit notes and have your own numbering sequence. Which might be different for your warranty repairs, where you want to make the invoice required for all items, whereas your repairs you don't require a invoice number. And you can have different return instructions defaulting per template as well. With the item policies, you can specify different rules for each of the items. For example, for the office desk kit, you may not allow credit notes, you may not allow replacement orders, or you may only allow credit notes within 30 days of the date of the invoice. And finally, with your customer templates, for per customer code, you can link them to an RMA template code if appropriate. If you are using the RMA email address to email the return instruction, you can fill them in here. Or if you're using the multi-contact feature of Sage 300, you would fill in the email address for RMA on the AR customer. And you can specify your default message template, which may be different per customer. But because we're using Sage Multi-Contacts and we've selected that option in RMA options, we need to go to the AR customers and configure the email addresses on the Contacts tab. On the Multi-Contact tab on the AR customer, we can create a new contact and then configure that contact for the RMA documents as is required. And link this contact code for your RMA return authorizations or return instructions, depending which you are sending to the customer. We've now configured all the options for RMA and are in a position to go ahead and create an RMA for our customer and email the customer the return instruction. We can create our RMAs in the RA transaction menu, or we can use the visual process flow. So we're going to process a return for customer 1200. The template code defaults to returns because we set that up in the policy, but we could change that. And we have our defaulted restocking fee for the returns based on our template of returns. And we can select to return from an invoice. And the customer is returning 2 of these. And 1 of these. And now if we wish to email the instruction, we can choose the customer's email destination. And there's a preview, and if we were set to email, the customer would have been emailed accordingly. In terms of processing with the RMA and working on the F9 zoom to see more of these fields, when the items are returned, we can complete that the items are returned, fill in any status codes that we may choose to work with, warranty or consumer contact information, until we're happy with this RMA. And if we agree that these 2 items are to be returned, and we're going to credit note them, we need to say whether the items are going to be returned to inventory or they're damaged items and they're going to be written off. So let's say these are okay, they're going to be returned to inventory. Similarly with the desk accessories, they're going to be returned to inventory. We can calculate the restocking fee, which is 10% of the RMA. And now we can go ahead and complete the RMA and generate the credit note. And zooming into the credit note, we see the handling fee, which is a credit amount, reducing the value of the credit note, plus the items. And now we can go ahead and run the relevant analysis reports. So this is showing us our customers with items and returns. We've now seen that in less than 15 minutes we can download, install and activate RMA. enter our activation code, configure the options, and create an RMA and print a summary report on RMAs created. For more details on the other options in the templates, item policies, and customer templates, please go to our website www.orchid.systems, and on the RMA page you'll find a more detailed training video which goes through all the other options. In this Spotlight on video, we're going to look at how we can tailor the RMA processing using RMA templates, item policies, and customer templates. RMA templates allow you to automatically apply restocking fees to your RMAs, define which exchange rate is to be used, the RMA based on the RMA date or based on the original invoice date. You can auto-default fields like references, descriptions, comments, shipwires. You can auto-default the salesperson to be used for replacement orders and credit notes. So you could have a particular RMA salesperson to avoid people getting too much sales commission on orders which are replacement orders or for credit notes which are not relating to the salesperson. You can also automate and default item and miscellaneous charge lines preferences. For example, if you're using the RMA status or workflow stage codes, you can default them when the RMA is created to different values. And whether or not you want to put the item on a credit note or a replacement order that gets created using this template code, then you can say those defaults as well on your template. And if you're using category or location to isolate your returns, you can also default those accordingly. You can also have different RMA document number prefix ranges based on the template code, so you could keep track of your returns with a different number net range from your repairs and from your warranty repairs to easily identify what work you're doing. You can check the quantity already credited against an invoice. So if you invoice 10, you can check that you don't credit more than 10 against that invoice. And you can make an invoice mandatory on your credit notes and always match your credit notes to invoices. And these sorts of template rules can only be overwritten by authorizing users. And similarly, on the item level, we can have policies per item to not allow credits, or only to allow credits within a certain number of days of the date of invoice, and or whether or not you're allowed to replace items that are sold. And again, template rules can only be overwritten by authorizing users. And for customers, you can specify a default template code under which your RMAs will be created for that customer. If you're not using the multiple contact feature in accounts receivable, you can define a specific RMA email address on their template. And you can define a default message ID for that particular customer. Let's have a look at all of this in action. Let's first look at the customer templates. When we enter an RMA for customer 1100, it's going to default to the template RET, and it's going to use this particular message ID for the email message for the return instruction and this email address. Whereas 1200 is going to default to REP for repairs with this email address and this message ID. And customer 1600 is going to default to warranty repairs with this particular email address and this particular email message template for the return instruction. So when we create an RMA for 1600, the template code is going to default to WAR. We may overwrite it, but that's going to be the default. And looking at the template codes, if we look at WAR, it defaults the description to warranty repairs. It does not have an automatic restocking fee. It uses the original document's exchange rate if we do a credit note. It has a particular salesperson called WAR, so we can keep track of credit notes and replacement orders done under the warranty template code. On the item details, we default to put the item on a replacement order because that's normally what we do. When we create a warranty repair, we replace it with a repaired or a new item at zero charge, and the default stage is 01 with the customer. And on the RMA processing, the RMA number is going to start with WAR. We're going to match any credit note to an invoice. The invoice is required for all items under warranty repairs, and we're going to check the quantity already credited. And we could configure a specific RMA instruction for this particular template code. So when we go ahead and create an RMA for customer 1600, you can see the template code defaults, some of these description fields default, and when we select an invoice, let's select invoice 52. And once we highlight the invoice number, Document Management Link is displaying to us the original invoice, and we can double click to see what was sold to the customer on this invoice number, and we see it was 20 of these items. Assuming that they're going to be returning all 20, and if we look at the detail zoom of the lines, we can see that the template has said typically you put warranty repairs onto a replacement order at zero value, but in this instance we're going to credit the customer. So we're going to put the item or miscellaneous charge line onto the credit note, but not at zero value. And we're going to add the document. We get a new document number prefixed by WAR, and if that was all we were going to do for this particular one, we could go ahead and create a credit note. And the credits note's been created for 20 of this item. Now, assuming some time passes and Dan Penn tells us he's going to return these items again, and again we're going to select that same invoice number. Now when we key in the quantity of 20, we get an error message saying that this quantity exceeds the amount that's already been credited against this particular invoice. And if I do need to do this, I need to get an authorizing or approving RMA user to first approve this. And then I'd be able to re-add this quantity and re-credit this quantity because this RMA has been approved. And looking at the restocking fee, here on our returns template, we are automatically charging a restocking fee based on the miscellaneous charge code RET, and it's not a percentage restocking fee, whereas the RET PCT restocking fee template code is automatically charging a restocking fee using the code RET10, and it's going to be 10% of the RMA value. So checking which customers have been set up for the template code RET, we see customer 1100 has been set up for RET. So we'll create an RMA for customer 1100, and we can see the miscellaneous charge code has automatically been added. Let's select an invoice invoice 21, and they're returning one of that item, two of that item, and perhaps invoice 36, and again returning 1 and 1. So the total cost of the RMA is at $95.56, and the restocking fee remains at $10 as per the setup of the miscellaneous charge code RET, which is different if we use the percentage restocking fee, which is defaulted the RET 10 miscellaneous charge code, and this one has 0 value. It'll only be calculated once we click calculate restocking fee. So let's just get some items onto this RMA, and we're going to return 2 and 2. So the RMA is $134, and if we calculate the restocking fee, it's going to be set to $13.42. And if we add more items, $187.85, and recalculate the restocking fee, we can see it's been reset based on 10% of the existing lines. And finally, using item policies, if we look at this item for the whiteboard marker, we do not allow credit notes unless it's within 30 days of the date of invoice, and we do not allow replacement orders. So if we go ahead and create an RMA, for customer 1500 and add that item, we're not allowed replacement orders based on the item policy. So we would be unable to put the item on a replacement order, and because we haven't applied an invoice, we would not be able to put it on a credit note either, unless we apply an invoice that's within 30 days. And again, if we approve this document by an authorizing user, these item policy validations will no longer hold for this RMA. In the Spotlight On video, we have reviewed how you can tailor your RMA process using RMA templates, item policies, and customer templates. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, Anne, for this detailed presentation of RMA, including item policies and customer templates. Now let's look at using RMA with other ORCID modules such as Extender and Information Manager, specifically Notes and Document Management Link. While RMA helps automate the returns process, Notes and Document Management Link help provide transparency in the business, where notes and documents can be shared among all team members that process returns and deal with the customer. Extender is used to control the approval workflow. In our example, Sue enters the return in ORCID RMA in Sage 300. Using Notes and Document Management Link, she will find the email received from the customer and add a note. When the client returns the goods, the RMA is marked complete, which starts the workflow. In our example, we've configured Extender workflow to assign the return to the QA inspector, who will review the stock before handing over to accounts for the final approval. Accounts can then approve the return, the RMA, to complete it and create the replacement order and/or the credit note as required. Let's now have a look in Sage 300. I'm logged into Sage 300 as Susan, and I receive an email from a customer that they want to return a good because the wrong color was sent. So I'm going to go into RMA and select Mr. Ronald Black, our customer. In the email he mentioned he attaches the invoice, so I know that it's come from invoice 004, which I can see here. So I'm just going to quickly add that RMA. And as you can see, we've configured Document Management Link to display some documents relevant to the RMA here, and we haven't entered any yet, and also to the original invoice, the documents relevant to Mr. Ronald Black. I've selected invoice 04, I can see the document here, and if I need to, I can double click on that document and open it. So he's only returning this one item, so I'm going to use F9 to open the screen, return one, and it is going to go on the replacement order because they want it in a different color. Save this. So now I can print my RA instruction. And in this example, I'm going to save my RA to the network folder that I've configured in DML. And I've configured it to create one folder per RA. So now if I refresh my tray, I can see that the RA instruction has been filed in Document Management Link. Exploring, I can see this document here. I might also want to add the original email from Mr. Ronald Black. And to do this, I'm going to go to my scan document, and this is the email that I have saved previously, and it gets renamed and attached into that particular folder. Sue can now add a note to that return. In the bronze color. So now I can see that I've got my note, I've got my documents relating to the original invoice, and I've got the document specific to the RMA. So a couple of days passed, and Susan now receives the goods from Mr. Ronald Black. So the RMA is now ready to be completed. So when she clicks complete, that will then start the workflow configured in Extender. Get a little message telling us that the workflow needs approval before it's completed, and this message is configurable. The fact that you get a message is also configurable in Extender workflow. So I close this, I don't need to print it. Next step, we've configured our workflow to assign the return to the QA inspection. So I'm going to log on as the QA user. Then open the workflow console, and I'm seeing that this return was started by Susan, return 21. I can check some values that might have been entered in the workflow, like it's customer 1200 Ronald Black. I know it's waiting for the inspection. I can drill down to either the customer activity or the customer, and also to the actual RMA. So I'm going to open it from here. And logged in as the QA user, I see the same documents so that they have access to the notes as well. And now you can see that they have access to the notes. So it is your choice in the configuration who can view what notes and what documents. So the QA user reviews the inspects the items, reviews the RMA, can amend the RMA as if required. And when they're done, they can click the inspect button to confirm that the inspection has been completed. The workflow has been configured that they need to enter a comment. So that all packaging was included and it can go back to stock. As that happens, the workflow now drops off my console because I've done my job as a QA user. But if I look at all workflow, I can see that now my RA21 has been allocated to accounts. So what I need to do is log in as Steve, who's part of the accounts team. And Steve can then look at the workflow console and sees RA21 waiting for approval. You can filter by colors if he only wants to see the RAs. And from here, similarly, he can choose to drill down to the actual RA. And like the other users, he will have access to the documents. He can check the original invoice and he can see the note. He could also enter his own note. So it's okay to send a replacement order as their account is current. And then from here, you can then could reject the next phase of the returns, or he can approve it and say, okay, to send a new order. Actually, I'm going to cancel this, show you one thing, that as he's looking at the workflow console in the values, he can see the inspection comment in here, that it's okay to return the item to stock, etc. So now I'm going to approve that, enter my comment. It's okay to send a new item. As I'm doing that, it's going to complete the RMA, which I can get to from the workflow log. And as I had filtered my log, I'm going to clear my filter and look at my RA21. So as you can see, I could filter by just RA21 here to see exactly what's happened to that RA. So we now have a complete log of what has actually happened to our RA in the system. It was created by Sue, and because it wasn't marked complete the first time around, workflow wasn't required. When Sue made the RA complete, when the item came back, it went to the stage of waiting for inspection. Then the QA user did the inspection and it got assigned to accounts. And Steve in accounts did the final approval. First time around, because I clicked cancel and did complete the approval, it stayed in that waiting step. So I can see that Steve first looked at it and then, a few minutes later or the next day actually finalized the approval. And from here I can also drill down to my RA. And I can see the notes that Steve has added. And if I look at the comments, I can see the inspection comment. We've configured the workflow to save the inspection comment here against the RA. And again, this is configuration that you can do yourself in the workflow template. In this example, we've seen how we can use notes and document management link around RMA to track details about the original invoice, about the customer, about the return process itself, as well as configure extender workflow to approve the completion of the RMA. In our next presentation, we're going to look at using Info Explorer to analyze returns. Info Explorer is ORCID's powerful and affordable BI tool supporting integrated analysis and budgeting. It connects to your Sage 300 databases and other ODBC databases. Provides the familiarity of a spreadsheet type layout without the limitations. You can slice and dice the data. For example, in the case of RMA, you can analyze your returns by item, by location, by customer, by fault type, all within the same report. So you don't need to rely on a static two-dimensional reports, which helps you identify trends and exceptions. So in our demonstration, we're going to look at the RMA sample cubes that are available on the ORCID website. And that's mainly two cubes, the RMA detail analysis and the RMA versus sales analysis cube. Those cubes being sample cubes, you can try them with Info Explorer Lite, which is the free version of Info Explorer. So we're going to look at what is in those sample cubes, demonstrate drilling through to the underlying Sage 300 screen and adding some chart and dashboards. I have added the Info Explorer icon to my Sage 300 desktop, but you can also run Info Explorer by itself. So to open the sample cube, we go into the main menu and choose Download Sample Cubes. We have a range of sample cubes available on the ORCID website, and I'm going to select the RMA ones. First, let's look at the RMA analysis. Download the cube. I'm going to save it on my machine. So the cube is saved with some data from sample data, but if you want to connect it to your own database, you come in here, click refresh, and put in the detail of your Sage 300 of your SQL database. You can test the connection, click OK, and now you're connected to your live database. In our example here, we start with a dashboard which shows us some analysis over time by fault code and by item, and then some RMA by customer. I have a couple of views on the side here showing me my RMA by item and by year, and I can choose from here to sort my item detail by my RMA amount. So this is sorting ascending, so we see the one that has the most RMA is our A11030 fluorescent desk lamp, followed by the halogen desk lamp. Can change the sort order by clicking this little arrow to show me the biggest ones first. I could also add the item category if I wanted to do some analysis at the category level. So just drag the item category, and now I can do my analysis at that level. Can collapse to see only the category, expand to see the category and the item details. If I look at my RMA by customer, I have my customer group and my customer in there. So again, I could sort by RMA amount within a given year, or I can sort based on the total RMA in this database. Another view that is pretty interesting is the incomplete RMA by workflow stage. So here I can see that all these RMA are still with the customer, and there's a few that have arrived at the warehouse, but they still haven't been completed. So that's really a good way to manage your exceptions and see where things are. On this particular view, I can create a copy of this view by just saying copy view. And then I can rename it to RMA details, for example. I want to drag the RMA number here. And I want to filter on the RMAs that are actually just with the customer. So I'm going to choose status 01 with the customer. And I can see a bunch of details. And I'm looking at the ones in, I can filter by location. So I could choose only the ones in location 1 in the central warehouse. And I might want to know what is happening with repair number 20, because I've worked on that one recently. And I can choose to drill through to RMA 20. This is going to prompt me to log on to Sage 300. And it's now opening the RA screen as if I was logged into Sage 300, including the document stored in DML and the notes that I might have entered against the RMA. I can check what's going on, possibly review the communications with the customer, and go to the next stage of my processing. Now, if I'm looking at RMA by a customer, I'm going to create a copy of this view because I want a slightly simpler view of this just by customer group. And I want to add a chart that's going to show me RA amounts. So I'm going to remove all the quantity related formulas, fields, and now I've just got my RA amount by customer group. I might also choose to hide all the grand totals. So now I've got my little table here, and from here I can add a chart. Don't really like this chart, but I can change it to be maybe a bar chart, and I'm going to swap the axis so that I can see my sales by year, my returns by year, split in a different customer group. So I can see here that the retail group has the majority of the returns, and that 2019 had a very big peak in returns. I'm going to save this chart. RA by customer group. Got my chart here, and I can choose, for example, to add this chart to my dashboard. Save the cube, and I can start sending it to other team members who might want to do some RA analysis. The other cube that I have access to, if I go back to download sample cubes, is my RA returns versus sales analysis. I'm going to download the cube. Same as before, I'm going to save it on my machine and refresh the data. This particular example, when I refresh the data, I'm prompted to enter start date and end date. And that's to keep the cubes relatively small. If you have a database with many years of sales history there, you may not want to do the analysis on all the detail for all the years, so you may only want the last 2 or 3 years. Test the connection. Okay, and now I have 2 types of analysis: my return versus sales by customer and a similar analysis by item. And I've added this formula of returns at the percentage of sales. I've got that per year. We see that Mr. Ronald Black had 23% of returns at the percent of sales, but Dan Penn had returns of 72% of total of sales. So it doesn't have very big sales, but has very big amount of returns. So I want to do some more analysis on this and maybe filter on, I didn't want to change that, filter on Mr. Dan Penn. So I can select just Mr. Dan Penn and then add some more information about his returns. I'm going to add the item category, item details, drag the item here, and see what item he's mainly returning. and whether there were particular fault codes. So I can start drilling down into the information to see why Mr. Dan Penn's rate of returns is so high. Similarly, with my sales by item, I could copy this view and have rename it to and add some details by external status and fault code. Can move them around. Collapse, and I can see that a lot of my return haven't been categorized, but the ones that have, they're split between broken and wrong color. So maybe I do have a problem in my stock with the color. And then I can expand on the color ones and see what were the actual fault codes and what items had issues with the wrong color. Drill down into more details from here. So hopefully this gives you some ideas as to what you can do with the Info Explorer sample cubes in terms of analyzing your returns. All this we can do with the Info Explorer Lite, so the free version. If you want to change the underlying queries or being able to export to Excel or CSV, then you need to get a full license for Info Explorer. RMA helps manage your returns efficiently when you add Info Explorer to provide insights into your returns rate by customer and items. You add Extender to enforce business rules validation, to develop a workflow around your array. You can also use Extender to automate the printing of the array so that the return instructions and the other documents created by RA are automatically saved with the right name in the customer folder. You really have a lot of flexibility in how you can process your returns to increase transparency and improve customer experience. In our example, we had configured the workflow to have 2 levels, but it is your choice how you configure it for your business requirements and also for different types of returns. You can notify users by email, and there are many examples in the workflow video on the ORCID website demonstrating using emails. You also have options to approve returns outside of the Sage 300 desktop using Remote Action Service and Workflow Anywhere, the mobile app. So this is the end of our presentation for today. Thank you very much for your time. You can look at the ORCID website for more information on RMA and the other ORCID modules that we have reviewed today. And now we are ready for questions.